Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Maisres, Pei Gimel Halachet Daled. We're learning today Daf Lamed Aleph, God willing, finishing the Perek, and we're starting from Daf Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph, all the way on the top of the Amud. Now, we just had on Daf Lamed Amud Beis, and we learned the Gemara as the Biur Hagra, as the Gra learns the Gemara, that Rabbi Yirmiyah made a comment in front of Rabbi Zajac telling him that when the Mishnah was speaking about a tree that's on the border, meaning the trunk is in the chutzner, the branches are over the gina, outside the chutzner, or vice versa. So he learned pshat in the Mishnah, not the way we learned it in the Mishnah, not the way everyone else was learning it. That the Mishnah is telling you that the determination whether you can snack from the fruits that you remove from the tree has to do at the location of the picker of the oimed, which would make a lot of sense. So Rabbi Yirmiyah told Rabbi Zajac that no, and again, the way the Gra learns, he told him that in a definitive way, that when it comes to the din of Maisris, it has to do where the branch is, which means where the fruits are when they are attached to the tree. You can see these words in the Biur Hagra, 3 lines before the bottom of the Amud, Savyad Aleph. That when it comes to Maisris, the Ozrinon Basal Hanoif. And clearly, even if the Oimid is not standing in that environment, I just want to make a correction because he writes something even more than what we said yesterday. Even if the picker is not standing in the Gina, the picker is actually standing in the Chutzner. I said yesterday that in that direction, that if the picker is standing in the Chutzner, even though he picked the fruits off the tree, off the branch in the Gina, but now there's the Iyas B'nei Chatzir because he brought it to himself. The Gra says no. Umalakid al Yidei Kana Aruch, and he's picking it by a big pole. We still say Ozlinan Basal Hanoif, since that's the way Rabbi Yirmiyah is learning Pshat. All we care is where the branch is. So the fruit was picked outside the Chatzir. Even when you take it to you meaning you are standing in the chutzner, you can be oichel kedarkoi. That means a snack. Now, what would the logic of that be? Because there wasn't a proper re'iyas p'nei chutzner. Re'iyas p'nei chutzner, re'iyas p'nei bayis is when it enters the normal gateway, when it enters the normal door. Here, it's like bringing it into the chutzner, like bringing it into the house through a skylight. That's not the normal re'iyas p'nei bayis. That's not re'iyas p'nei chutzner. It will still remain exempted from maisres, which would mean you can never have a kavua, but you can have an achilas arei. This is the way we are learning pshat in Rabbi Yirmiyah. The Gemara is going to begin with a little bit of an offshoot, a general approach when it comes to learning agadata. Agadata here doesn't mean stories. Agadata means certain drush ways of interpreting psukim in Tanakh. And what many people would call Hasidic Torahs, where you have a pasuk and the pshat is one way, but you read it in such a different way that you went to the moon with it. You went completely off the pshat. And during this conversation, we're going to hear how Rabbi Zajac critiqued those people that spend a lot of time making these types of drushes or learning agadata. Rabbi Zajac considered these people magicians. Magicians is just a borrowed term of someone that makes something come out of nothing. Of course, only the Eibishter is a Beide Yesh Ma'ayin, but it gives such an impression. But you're making up your new pshat in the psukim. And he told Rabbi Yirmiyah that he should stick to learning Nigla, particularly using this as an example of how important it was, this comment of Rabbi Yirmiyah, suggesting that our Mishnah is telling you don't follow the picker, follow the branch, and how consequential it is halachically to have these conversations, special to know the halacha, versus the drashas in Chazal. According to Rab Zajac, in a certain setting, he wasn't the biggest fan of it. We're going to go through that. The Gemara, all the way till the end of the Masechta, is going to all go back to this halacha dalad Mishnah. We're going to go back to the case of Bata Yarachayma. And by the way, the Mishnah says that by Bata Yarachayma, all that we follow is the trunk. All of that is based on the premise that a tree, that the dinim that God writes explicitly in the Torah concerning Bati Arachayma doesn't only apply to houses. which is that you have 1 year to redeem it, and if you didn't redeem it within the year of its sale, latzmisus, it belongs to the purchaser. Maybe that's only for a house. Who told you it b'chlal goes to a tree? Really, the Gemara is going to, well, the Mishnah obviously holds that way. The Gemara is going to tell you that that's really subject to a machlokes tanoim. We're going to go me'inyan le'inyan, speaking about Bati Yorech Freima, we're going to have another machlokes tanoim. What were to happen if there is a home that's built into the wall that's surrounding the city? Built into the wall means that the outer wall of the home is the outer wall of the city. That's the same wall. So is the house in the walled city, or is the house the walled city? And we're going to see whether it's included in these halachas or not. We're going to fight to go back to when the Mishnah says that by Yari Miklot, the words in the Mishnah is Hakoil Hoilach Achar Hanoif. I want to point out that when we learned the Mishnah, I think we read the Marafulda or the Rashirilio, we learned the Mishnah the way Rav Ashi learns the Mishnah in the Bavli. And I know that Aviv showed me a Gemara in Makes. Clearly, as we'll see today, the Yerushalmi has a complete different understanding in the Mishnah, which is Gavaldik. Rav Ashi learned Pshat in the Mishnah, Hakoil Hoilach Achar Hanoif. I'll repeat this when we get there in the Gemara. Dafkin, not only the branch, but L'chumra, we follow both the trunk and the branch. So let's speak about we're going to call him the killer, the manslaughterer. And if he's in the Ari Miklat, he's protected from the Goyal Hadam. And we said it doesn't only mean in the Ari Miklat. It means if he's in the Tchum Shabbos Yantiv of the Ari Miklat. What happens if there's a tree that either or is in the Tchum, either the branches are in the Tchum, the trunk is out, or the other way around? So the Rav Ashi learned Pshat in the Mishnah, Hakoil Hoilach Achar Hanoif means that no matter where the killer is, no matter which one is in, which one is out, since part of it is inside the Tchum, he's always protected. We're going to see in our Gemara, Rab Chinana has a whole different understanding of the Mishnah. Legamri, Hakoil Hoilach Achar Hanoif means kepshutai. We only follow the branch, but it means that we separate the tree into two parts. If the trunk, let's say, is in the tchum and the branches are outside the tchum, just as an example. So we say that if the killer is on the branches, he's outside the tchum. If he were to go to the trunk, he would be inside the tchum, and the same thing vice versa, which is a very different understanding of the way the Bavli understands our Mishnah.
But Ashi understands everything in Rabbi Yehuda, who goes against the Rabban.
So I want to tell you just that Aviv came prepared today because he already sent me 2 days ago that something that I said didn't match up. At least we know you hit it. I told you, you're saying good. Let's learn today and then we'll take it from there. And finally, the last part of the Mishnah is concerning Ma'aser Sheni, the same thing. In other words, by Ma'aser Sheni, it's not just like by the killer. Are you protected or not? By Ma'aser Sheni, if you are in Yerushalayim, there is a leniency and a stringency. What's the leniency, Aviv? You can eat Ma'aser Sheni. Watch the stringency, you cannot redeem it. If you're outside of Yerushalayim at HaKodesh, it's also, you can't eat it, but you could redeem it. So again, we're going to see how to learn Pshat in the Mishnah. When the Mishnah speaks about that by Ma'aser Sheni, you go after the branch. What does that mean? And our Gemara is going to correlate it with a din, with another Baraisa that speaks about something similar, and that is an olive press, listen to these words, that was built inside Choymais Yerushalayim, having a door facing outside the city, or when you have a olive press that's not just built inside the walls. It's built in the walls, but it protrudes, begashmias, outside. So the walls of Yerushalayim, so you can have something that uses the inner part of the walls as part of the olive press. Some of that goes out, actually outside Yerushalayim, but the entrance door is inside Yerushalayim. How are we to view the status of anything that's inside that olive press? Again, could you redeem it? That's only if you are outside Yerushalayim. Could you eat it? That's only if you are inside Yerushalayim. And as we will learn Pshat concerning the olive press, the same will be the Pshat over here with the tree, trunk and branches, some in, some out. We're going to see how the mamash are connected one to the other. This is the whole ending of this Perek, Chavra Daf Lamed Aleph all the way on the top. Dolma, we had this word many times. Dolma means a story. Look inside the Mara folder. I remember the first time we had this in Masechta Brachas. Maisa. And don't get excited. We'll see over here, even the Agadata, it's a much more lumdish Agadata, but this is a very, very important conversation here. During the time that Rabbi Yirmiyah stood in front of Rab Ze'eda, and he suggested to him this new pshat in the Mishnah, the way we're learning. It doesn't follow the Oimed. When the Mishnah spoke about the tree that's half in the trunk is in the Chatzar, the branches are outside, or vice versa. He says, no, the Mishnah is telling you is that all we care is where are the branches. And we follow only the branches. A new way of learning the Mishnah. So when Rab Ze'eda heard that from Rabbi Yirmiyah, he said the following, that Rab Ze'eda and Rav Abba Bar Kahana, Rav Levi Hava Yesivin, they were sitting together. Now, Rabbi Yirmiyah we'll see over here, was like a Talmud. Rab Ze'eda referred to him as my son. But it looks like to me that Rab Abba Bar Kahana and Rab Levi, they were older, and they considered themselves chaverim of Rab Ze'eda, and they were masters in Agadata. Agadata, again, meaning to take a pasuk, we call this Chasidish Torahs, and to interpret the pasuk on a whole new level, an Agadatic way of learning Tanakh. And Rab Ze'eda critiqued this derech halimud. Rab Ze'eda mekanter, guys, mekanter means he was criticizing. Le'ilein da Agadata, those who expound the Tanakh with these drushes, learning psukim out of their regular understanding, or applying a pasuk not in the halachic direction, but in the, let's say, in the esoteric direction, or even in the ethical direction. That's the meaning here of those who learn Agadata. V'tzavach loin. He shouted, and he called them, you know what they are? They are sifrei. Sifrei doesn't mean books, it means soifrim. They are scholars of magic. That's a very strong statement. How he called them magicians. You guys are scholars in magic. Why is it calling it magic? Because, like I mentioned, when you do magic, you're giving the fake appearance that you're creating something out of nothing. So when you interpret a pasuk, this is going to be our words, the way the Rash Cirilio. No, we'll leave it like the way they learn over here. Not the way the Messiah taught you how to learn a pasuk, which is the way you have to learn Torah. Everything has a tradition. You read the Chumash, you can't learn Chumash without the Rashi, without the Messiah. But when you interpret a pasuk, the way Rashi does, Rashi didn't make it up. That's something that he learned from his teachers, going all the way back to Moshe Sinai. That's what Hashem meant. When people were learning Agadata, they were giving interpretations not based on tradition, but they had certain ethics, and then they saw that, they linked that into the pasuk, and he called that magic, and he was not happy with it. And again, even though he did not direct his words face to face to Rav Abba and Rab Levi, but it's understood that he was talking to them. So they defended their position. Amalei Rabba is Rav Abba. Rav Abba Bar Kahana told Rab Ze'eda, Lama at mekantoloin, why are you criticizing them? Or why are you criticizing me? Sha'al ve'inun negivimach. You know what? Ask a question. Take a pasuk. Take an agadata that you heard. I want to be specific and tell me, and I'm going to tell you how we learn pshat, and I want you to tell me what's wrong with our agadata. So he told him, fine. Why he picked this, who knows? So he picked a pasuk in Tehillim, Ayin Vav, and the pasuk reads, Ma hodein d'chsev. How do you teach the pasuk? Ki chamas adam toideka. Now I want to tell you the pshat of this pasuk. Chamas here, we know what Hamas is. Hamas in the Chumash means ganovim, right? Here it means rage, and no one will debate that. That means not stam anger, rage. Hamas Adam Toideka would mean the rage of man. What's the meaning of Toideka? Will acknowledge you. The rage of man will be thankful to you. Now, what does that mean? It's not clear. How does the rage of man somehow express Hoida'a to the Oibishter? But and then She'edis Chemois, the remnant of rage, Tachgoid, you restrain. It's like very difficult to teach the pshat. Now, what's amazing is that our Gemara is not going into what's the pshat. I don't know what the pshat is. He asked, Rab Ze'eda asked Rab Abba, what's your agadata? How do you learn it in a homiletic way? And to which he responded, I'll tell you the pshat. Ki chamas adam toideka bo'olam hazeh, says that Asherilio, that when a person is the recipient of God's rage, you know what that means? When a person suffers in Olam Hazeh, when a person undergoes Yisurim, some people, when they receive that, you know what they do? They get angry at God. Some people become humbled, and it rouses them to make a cheshbon hanefesh, and many people come to a place where they actually give thanks to God for that which they underwent, once they underwent it. So the pasuk is saying that when if a person chooses to respond to his yisurim by giving thanks to God, that's the meaning. Chamas aden she'eris chemois tachgard. Then God will be makel, says that Asher Elio. Then even though the person did not receive all of punishment for their bad deeds in this world, but since their attitude towards Yisurim was actually to acknowledge the righteousness of God and to say to Hashem, I thank you for this, it helped me become better, that makes them merit that the remnant of the punishment, God won't even give them. Really, they should have, whatever they got wasn't to cover all of the chayvas that they have. But because of them acknowledging the Oibishter, God will hold back the remnant. Beautiful. And somehow this is called Agadata. Like, I don't even know how to learn the Pshat. It's beautiful. So you would think that Rabbi Zajac would say, Gavaldik. He didn't. Rabbi Zajac says exactly, I don't like you guys making up stuff. Why? Because Amar Lei, Oy Neyman, just like you touched it in your direction, I can interpret the pasuk the opposite. And what would be the opposite? That when it says she'edis chemois tacher ba'olam hazeh, that in this world, Hashem doesn't even use these words. God doesn't give the merit for everyone to pay for all of the mistakes that they make. In olam hazeh, they only get a little bit, a she'edis, a little bit. But when are they going to be fully cleansed? In olam haba, when they're going to be really punished. And only then will we thank God that we're done with the payment. No, Rabbi Abba was teaching the pasuk in a way that we can get off the hook, ke'ilu. That if we have the right attitude towards Yisurim, we're going to be protected from getting all the divine retribution. And says Rabbi Zajac, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the pasuk is telling you that in this world, whatever we get is only a remnant. And we're not fully cleansed. And if we're not fully cleansed, if there's still payment to make, we're not yet in the position to be thankful to God. You know when we thank God? When it's over. When the story, the Yisurim ended. And no one gets off the hook. That's a lot of gevura. And then the Gemara says, you know what? I can touch the pasuk even in a third way. Amar Rabbi Levi, that's Rabbi Abba Barkan Rabbi Levi. He says, I'll tell you what the pasuk means. That kisheta oirer chamascha al rishoyim. You know what it means that we will acknowledge or thank God when there is rage? No, it means that when the tzaddikim witness how Hashem is finally punishing the Rishoyim, when we witness the fury of God directed towards the Rishoyim, we, the tzaddikim, will thank you, God. When we're seeing what's happening to the Rishoyim over there in Iran, we give thanks to the Eibusher. That's the meaning of the pasuk. It's not about me suffering and me either acknowledging and me somehow wiping my slate clean just because of my hoida'ah. No. And you know when, okay. So Amar Rab Zajac, to Rab Zajac says, he tells Rab Levi, you're making my point. That this interpretation can go in this direction. This pasuk can be interpreted in the other direction. So if any pasuk can be interpreted one way or in the opposite direction, you know what I say? You know nothing from it. We're not learning anything from it. You can touch the pasuk any way you want. And therefore, what was he saying? Yirmiyah Beni turns to, in this case, Azal Tsoir Duk Nisach, you stick to your inquiry or to your new interpretation of the Mishnah. Again, he was speaking about a case that if you pick it with the pole, not the way we add it today, that it mamish makes no difference where you're standing. We only follow where the branch is. This is something worthwhile to delve into. Is the Mishnah like this? Is the Mishnah like that? Tehi tava min kulam. Okay. I would just say regarding this pasuk and the question how to teach it, whether we'll be spared from some punishment, maybe no one is going to be spared from any type of punishment. Everyone has to pay all their dues. Maybe that is loymaila v'loymoidet. Maybe, because what will I learn? This is not about how I should behave. This is about, will I be partially punished? Will I not be partially punished? Now, there is to learn that when a person undergoes Yisurim, that they should be humbled and they should thank God. That is something that we learn. But the detail of, will that exempt me from more punishment or not? That's the meaning. There's no purpose for that. It's going to be what it's going to be. And maybe that this question of, is it where you are standing or is it where you're reaching? I think there is a very deep, also homiletical idea imbued in this. In other words, I know where I'm standing. We're not standing in such a great place. We're not who we think we are. But on the other hand, we have the koyach to reach very far. Look how, people like us can really accomplish great things. The problem is sometimes we think we're great people. We're not great people. We're flawed people, but our reach is gavaldic. So this discussion is whether we judge you based on where you're standing or whether you're judged based on where you reach. And Rabbi Yerushalmi is saying it's not about where you're standing. Doesn't matter if you're not in a good standing. It doesn't matter if we are on a lowly level. Doesn't matter. What matters is where we're reaching. I think maybe in the agadat of this, that's a lot more consequential. That's very inspiring. What inspiration do you get by knowing that if you're going to have hoidah, you'll get punished less? Only for a person who's doing everything to prevent themselves from getting punished are they very impressed with that. But maybe Rabbi Zajac was hoping people are graduated from that. Of course, no one wants to go through Yisurim. People want to be given a pass from God. I know that. But again, that's not avodas Hashem. My avodas Hashem is, I want to go back to maybe if this is the meaning, is that I need to know that no matter where I'm standing, how many people don't do great things because they say to themselves, I'm unworthy of it. And they're taka unworthy. Even though we're unworthy, look at what a person can accomplish. And as long as we're living, it's amazing how Hashem allows us to accomplish things that are way beyond where we're standing. Just go reach for it. Get a pole. Keravelt. And that's the agadah that's important. Maybe. Okay. Now we're going to close up the last two topics of the Mishnah regarding, again, the tree and the branch. So, the Mishnah made a definitive rule, again, based on the premise that if you sold a tree, if the trunk of the tree is inside the walled city, inside the Ari Chaima, then it goes latzmisus. If you don't redeem it within the year, if the trunk is outside the Ari Chaima, even though the branches go inside the Ari Chaima, then it doesn't follow the rules of Batei Ari Chaima. It follows the regular rules. I want to tell you the regular rules by a field. It's like a field. That by a field, the Torah says the opposite. That when you sell a field in the Holy Land, the original owner can never redeem it within the first 2 years. Because if not, no one would buy anything. Don't forget, the din of Yovel is that if it wasn't redeemed, automatically it goes back to the owner on Yovel. But the Torah writes something else. That let's say it's 30 years before Yovel, and I sold it for $30,000. I sold it for $30, $1 a year. The Torah says that. That means that after 2 years, I can pay the owner $28 and get it back. After 3 years, I can pay the owner $27 and get it back. I can only begin doing that within 2 years. This is the rule of a Sada. So it says our Gemara, the fact that our Mishnah is beginning with the premise that a tree, the dinim of the Torah of Batei Ari Chaima also apply to a tree. So now you have to determine, is the tree in the city, is the tree outside the city? This is really subject to a machlokes tanoim. And where do we have that? Tamon, Tanin, and over there is Masechtas Erchin. And it's a machlokes between, in the gears of the Bavli, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. In the gears of the Yerushalmi, you'll see the Chachamim and Rabbi Meir. That means the Tanakama, the Gemara is going to refer to the Tanakama as the Chachamim, which is not a stira. Because Bechal, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, halachic Rabbi Yehuda, which probably meant that most people agreed with Rabbi Yehuda, So it can be Rabbi Yehuda, it can be the Chachamim. Whatever it is, we're not going to have the word Rabbi Yehuda here. Tamon taninon kol shulifnim and achayma, any structure that's within the wall of the walled city, hareu kabata yorechayma, with only one exception, chutz min hasadis. Now, what are we talking about? All. The Gemara is going to say what we're talking about. Many other types of structures. They have the same din of the bata yorechayma, which is again that the owner has 1 year to redeem it, and if he doesn't, then forever it remains in the ownership of the purchaser and of their family. Rav Meir Omer, no, everything means even fields. Even fields, if there is a field, which is not that common, but inside a bati or a chayma, it also follows the same rule. Says the Gemara Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis, by Talmud Rabbanon. Why is the field excluded? I want to tell you the way I understand Pshat. The field excluded will mean the tree is excluded, which would mean that our Mishnah doesn't follow the Chachamim. Our Mishnah says, as a given, that the tree is vadai included in the dinim of Bati Yerushalmi. Our Mishnah would only be Rav Meir. But where do we get it from? So in Parshas Bahar, and we can read the whole pasuk. Look inside the Torah Oira Shalom. The im lo yigoyel adno lo yisleishana tamima. The Torah explicitly is speaking about a house. You have 1 full year from the sale. Then bekom habayis asher bo'ir. The word bo'ir is superfluous, right? Because we're speaking about a house that's in a city that's walled. That will be the limud, through which will include more. Take a look that you have a kri and a ksiv. In other words, in the Chumash, the actual letter is lamed mitan aleph. And it doesn't mean loy, no, it doesn't mean that. We're speaking about a house that's in a city that has a wall. Asher loy chayma. So then, if he didn't redeem it, then it's latzmisus, forever. When you learn chitas, as we should, Rashi brings the Chachamim that say that why did Hashem write it with an aleph? It's called ksiv, kri, ksiv. Eim la mikra, eim la mesoidis, whichever way you want to word it. So Rashi writes that's because that even if this city does not have a wall right now there is no wall. If it had a wall during the times that Yeshua ben Nun conquered the Holy Land, if it then had Lamed Vav, then it has the din of the Bati Oirechayim. That's the pshat of the Kri and the Ksiv. Our Gemara will give you another pshat from the Kri and the Ksiv, and let's read it inside. So when the Torah speaks about a bias, become bias, or ainly a bias, you would think that the only thing included in these unique halachas is only if you sold a house. Benayin, how do you know the rabbis that we include Bate Badin if a person had an olive press in the city? Or if he had a boiray, shichanuma oirais, different types of trenches, different type of reservoirs, or merchatzois, a bathhouse, or v'chois, or if he has a doff coat, or if he has a migdal means, this is important, not a above ground closet, something that's mechuber lakarka. It's like you dug in the ground an opening, a vault, and a storage vault, but it's in the ground. How do I know that these also follow the halach of Bata Yerechayma? So Talmud loimer, like we just read, the words bo'ir is superfluous. So the word bo'ir is including all of these. Now, says the Chachamim / Rabbi Yehuda, yochol af asadois, including trees. No. Talmud loimer bias. Ma bias shu miyuched. What's unique about a host? Shuhu beis dira. Now, guys, I know that people don't live in a beis Chabad. In a beis Chabad, we live. We don't live in an aleph press. I get that, but you could. There's walls. There's a roof. People don't live in a boir. To some degree, you could. A field, a tree, is like there's no walls, there's no roof. It's like gamre different. That's the meaning. Shumayuchet yatsu sadois she'enam beis dira at all. And again, we will learn pshat in our Gemara. According to the Chachamim, this also will exclude trees. That means, according to the Chachamim, trees bechlal man bechar shemayu. What do you mean? The trunk is in the city, the branches are outside the city. Who cares? Even if the whole tree is in the city, it doesn't follow the din of Bati Yerechayim. So our Mishnah is not L'Kol Yalma. Now, our Mishnah follows Rav Meir. My Talmud Rav Meir, same thing with a different outcome. The Torah says V'kam Abayis. So he begins the same way. Ainli El Abayis. Minayin L'Rabbis Batei Badin Boides Shichanum Oris V'Chosayis He goes V'Hasadois. He adds Sadeh. Talmud Loimer Asher Bo'ir. The period. And I wanted to mention that the Lamed Aleph and the Lamed Vav, have to do with this. How does it have to do with this? That's what I chapped yesterday. So let's read over here the Noise Kalim. That's the Kri and the Ksiv. I need a moment. Yesterday was Purim. No, that's what happens. I take it back. The Kri and the Ksiv is the next shtickle Gemara. Okay. This has nothing to do with Kri and Ksiv. This has to do with Rab Meir uses Asher Bo'ir as a premise to include everything, period. And he doesn't need a Dumya Dabayis. Interesting. So the Torah only uses a mashal, prat, and a klal. Doesn't follow the regular Yud Gimel Midos. We're not limiting the klal at all. Anything in the city that's sold, if it's in the city, follows this unique halacha. And based on that premise, the Mishnah speaks about, now what happens if you have a tree that's not fully in the city, it's only partially in the city. And we say, hakoil hoylach achar ho'ikar, which means the trunk, which is by the Batei Orachayma. Now, says the Gemara, now that we're learning the sugya of Batei Orachayma, here we have the Kri and the Ksiv. Asher loy chayma. The Torah should have said, Asher loy metan aleph. If you're listening to this, you can't get it. You have to see it. Lamed vav. Asher lamed vav chayma. What does that mean? What do you mean, Asher loy chayma? The Torah should have written loy chayma, but it doesn't write loy chayma. We only read it loy chayma. It's written lamed aleph, which doesn't make sense. So says the Gemara, Prat, you know what this excludes? Labayis habanui b'chayma. If you have a house, which was not uncommon, they built it in the wall. The walls were very thick, which means that the outer wall of the house is the outer wall of the city. The outer wall of the city is the outer wall of the house. What's wrong with that? There's two ways of looking at it. Either you can say the house is inside the walled city, or no, it's not inside the walled city. The house is the wall. It's not inside the wall. And indeed, so holds Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, such a home is excluded from the dinim of Batei Orachayma. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rab Shimon Omer, nisht azoi, koitzel hachitzen hu achayma, and therefore it is included. Yes, it is included. Either of them, both of them, I would go, maybe. It's whether you give the primary to the ksiv or whether you give the primary to the kri. If you give it to the ksiv asher loy, that's shitas Rab Shimon, that we include the dinim even though this house is not inside a walled city. The house is the wall. It's not inside the wall. If you give the primary drasha to the kri lamed vav, then it's only if the house has walls around it. This house does not have walls around it. That will be Rabbi Yehuda. You have to see if that fits. Okay. So Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda darash asher loy chayma, like we just explained, and it does not have a chayma because it is the chayma. And Rab Shimon, clear. Rab Shimon focuses primarily on the words that are written, which is Lamed Aleph, which means it has no wall. In other words, you're right. This house doesn't have walls around it. It doesn't. Yet it's included in the pasuk. It's still included in the dinim of Batei Orachayma. Doesn't matter that it doesn't have a wall outside of it. It is the wall. So it's enough for it to be considered halachically as in the walled city.
This is the same in Shushan Purim and this house if you have to.
So Rab Shlomo Zajac good. We know the din is that Shushan Purim, Tachnun, we're not going to say. Question is, are we obligated to Adelo Yada Nachamal? So if you live in a walled city, you have to do it. What happens if you have a home that's inside the wall? Maybe that's the machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rab Shimon. Problem is that halachically, we normal, who do we paskin like? Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, who do we paskin like? Not so simple.
Shabbos, we do a lot of Reb
Not
Shimon.
consistent. Sometimes we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, right? By Beloch Hashem, it's Richa Lugufa, we paskin like Rabbi Shimon, by Dov Hashem Eschav. We're not consistent. Just fine. That means you get to pick. The whole Purim, the Yerushalmi is saying is a Dov Hashem Eschav. That's not true. We intentionally get drunk. Okay, let's go back. Now, the Mishnah spoke about the din of Arei Miklat, and we learned the Mishnah the way Rav Ashi learns the Mishnah. When the Mishnah says that we go after the noif, we learned the Marafulda, it doesn't mean you follow the branches, even though the Mishnah says those words. It means you also follow the branches, you also follow the trunk, which means that if either or, branches or trunk, are within the tchum of the Arei Miklat, either or, if the murderer, if the manslaughterer is on the trunk or on the branches, doesn't matter where, either or, the Goyal Hadam is not allowed to kill him. We don't only follow the trunk, we also follow the branches, but always in a way that he stays protected. That's not the way the Gemara will understand it. The Gemara actually will understand the words of our Mishnah Kepshutai, that you follow the knife, you follow the branch. But you would think, if you follow the branch, what would be if the branches are inside the city, inside the tchum, the trunk is outside the tchum? Rabbi Chanina is saying, don't think that since the branches are inside the tchum, if the murderer, if the killer, I call him the killer, the manslaughterer, is by the trunk or on the trunk, don't think that the Mishnah is saying he's protected. Actually, our Mishnah will view the tree as two different parts. That's really the meaning of the Mishnah. The trunk stands for itself, and the branches stands for himself. And you will be ruled by the place where you're at. If you're by the trunk, take a look where the trunk is. If you are by the branches, we get to separate the branches from the trunk. If the branches are inside the tchum, then you're protected, even though the trunk is outside of it. That will be the way Rabbi Chanina learns the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Chanina, even in the case that I just said, that what? That if the branches are within the Arei Miklat, the tchum, you're protected. That's only if you went up on the branches. Derech hanoif. If the branches are outside of the city, you're not protected. If the branches are outside of the city, you're not protected. You know when you're not protected? If you went up on the branches without going up on the trunk. But if the way you got to the branches is by going up to the trunk, which means that the trunk is in the tchum, which means that when you were going up the tree, you were at a moment in a place where you're protected. This is amazing. Even though the Mishnah is saying, Hakol, Hoylach, Achar, Hanoif, the way Rabbi Chanina learns, the branches are separated from the trunk. In this case, since you were on the trunk and you got to the branches through the trunk, for you, the branches are an extension of the trunk. Why? You understand, Aviv? Because how did you get there? The only way you got there was because you used the trunk. If the trunk became the stepping blocks to get to the branches, then you're going to be saved also. Kvar kolotoi ha'ikar. That's a big chiddush. And then the goyel hadam cannot kill you even when you are only on the branches. And even though our understanding is that the branches are a makim for themselves. And now we're going to go to the final part of the Mishnah. The final part of the Mishnah is Meiser Sheni. Here again, the Mishnah said the words hakoil hoylach achar hanoif. Here again, the way we will extend automatically the way Rabbi Chanina understands the Achar Hanoif by the Arei Miklat is that no, we don't go l'chumra. We don't. What we say is that we separate. No. I'm going back. Here we go like Rav Ashi. That Hakal Hoylach Achar Hanoif means that whether the trunk or whether the branches are in Yerushalmi and the other is outside Yerushalmi, no matter where you are, we're going to apply the chumras of both to both. Chumras of both meaning not you could redeem it, nor can you eat it. And that's a very big stringency. It's amazing how the Gemara doesn't, we're not being consistent over here. No, we're learning the last pshat of the Mishnah the way Rav Ashi learned the Ari Miklat part of the Mishnah. But that's not the way Rab Chinana learned it. Maybe the Gemara is saying Rab Chinana had a new way of learning it. And now the Gemara is going back to the everyone else's way of learning it. Maybe Rab Chinana would learn the last part of the Mishnah consistent with how we learned the Ari Miklat. That I'm not clear. But one thing is clear, that our Gemara is going to go based on the premise that we follow the Chumrah of both. You can't redeem and you can't eat. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, we have a Mishnah in Masechtas Ma'aser Sheni that's speaking about an olive press that's inside the walls. And the Mishnah gives various scenarios. One of the scenarios of the Mishnah is where the actual olive press is outside Yerushalmi, but the opening, how do you get in there, is inside Yerushalmi, or vice versa, And what will be the status of the olives or any other item that will be in that olive press? And what's amazing is that over there's a machloikas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai is the one that says that no matter whichever way, if the opening is inside Yerushalayim and the olive press is outside Yerushalayim, if the olive press is inside Yerushalayim, but the door to get there, the opening, the Pesach to get there is outside Yerushalayim, either or, Beis Shammai says that you have to behave inside that olive press like the chumrah of both. Not you can eat Ma'aser Sheni there, nor could you redeem, which will be a big chiddush, because based on that, it's going to be that our Mishnah only follows Beis Shammai, which is something that probably we ideally don't want to do, but we have to do when we have to do it. And that's what the Gemara is saying, that our Mishnah is following the opinion of Beis Shammai over there in Masechtas Ma'aser Sheni. The Beis Shammai oimrim hakoil kelifnim. It's amazing how our Mishnah says the words, you go after the knife. The words in the Mishnah is hakoil kelifnim, but the pshat is not what it sounds like. The whole thing today is agadata. Hakoil kelifnim is that we follow the chumrah. If any part is inside, whether the olive press is inside, the opening is to out, whether the opening is inside, the olive press is out, either way, then we are machmir like both, not kelifnim, and you can eat it there. Not you can eat it, nor can you redeem it. That is Shita is Beis Shammai there, and therefore, Ein Lanu Breida. Our Mishnah follows Beis Shammai. I want to tell you, Beis Hillel holds that we separate the olive press. Whatever part of the press is outside the walls is treated both for redeeming and eating, like outside. Whichever part of the olive press is inside the walls of Yerushalayim is treated both for redeeming and for eating, like inside. Very much like Rabbi Chinana learned in the previous piece in the Mishnah, that really we separate the knife and the trunk. We separate them. We don't have to determine what's the status of the tree. Depends. If the ikid is inside, then you're protected. If you're on the ikid, if you are on the branches outside, then you're not protected, even though the ikid is inside. That's what Rabbi Chinana said. Aside of his detail that if you climbed up to the branches through the trunk, then you're protected. Aside of that scenario, it's gavaldik. Which would then mean, that the Mishnah is paskening like Beis Hillel when it comes to the Ari Miklat. Using the same words, the Mishnah is paskening like Beis Shammai when it comes to the final din of the Mishnah Ma'aser Sheni, which makes it even a bigger, hard thing to understand. But that's what Rabbeinu HaKadosh did. We're going to finish the Perek, Daf Lamed Beis, Daf Leiv. And based on this statement, which we are accepting, that what? That our Mishnah is only, the last part of the Mishnah only follows Shita as Beis Shammai, but Beis Hillel would not learn that way. Beis Hillel will give, like we just said, the trunk and the branches, each one has its own domain. This actually now will help us understand the following Braisa. Tani, we learned in a Braisa that what? If you have a tree that has branches, and you, after there were branches that were outside the city of Yerushalayim, you have to be a botanist. You took a branch and you drew it back in. You bent it back in permanently, and now the branch is inside the city. So it says in the Braisa, now kula kilifnim. That means if you are on that branch, even though that branch was outside, now you are inside. Okay. Now, let me tell you something. Which implies that if you left the branch outside, then what? Then it's outside Yerushalayim. That cannot follow Beis Shammai. Why not? Because according to Beis Shammai doesn't separate the tree from the branches. Beis Shammai says we go l'chumra. If any part of the tree is inside, any part outside, we have to be noig both chumras. So now that we established that our Mishnah is only like Beis Shammai, now we can understand the Braisa, because when we learned the Braisa, what the Braisa is not saying is implying, unlike the Mishnah. Of course, the Braisa follows Beis Hillel. How ironic, huh? And our Mishnah follows Beis Shammai. And not only that, the Gemara says, I'll tell you even better. The is bahem tanoa kadmoa ke Beis Shammai. I found a version of this Braisa that had a Tanakama, which now we're saying is Beis Shammai, and the Tanakama doesn't agree with this statement of hechzer es hanoif mi befnim then kuli kilifnim. Doesn't say that. The Tanakama and the Braisa says clearly that when you have a tree that's part in and part out, you have to be noyig l'chumra no matter where you're at. The whole time, you can't redeem and you can't eat it. Fakert, the Braisa itself had two opinions, which we would now know that the Tanakama would be Beis Shammai, which is our Mishnah, and this Braisa follows the sheet of Beis Hillel. On that we say, Hadron Allah Hamaver Te'enim, we're coming back to you, and tomorrow, God willing, we're starting with the 4th chapter, HaKoivei.